The tools that we need today are the hole punch pliers, 1.8 mil, the round nose pliers, chain nose pliers, and also a pair of hex wrenches. We're also going to be doing some stamping on the flower blanks, so we need some design stamps. I'm using the half sunburst stamp and the dotty diamond, a bench block, the 1 pound brass mallet, a Sharpie, and a Pro Polish pad for oxidizing and shining. The items that we will be using are a sterling silver flower, a gold filled flower for contrast, and also the nuts and bolts. There's actually 3 pieces to these. There is the bolt, the nut, and the washer. So you could see here the 2 blanks that I used, the silver flower and the gold filled flower. I used 2 different stamps. One, I used the dotty diamond on the gold filled to add more of a texture effect. So like in nature, you will see not always very specific patterns, but it's very random. So that's why I use the dotty diamond in all sorts of directions, not like you would on a regular design stamp. As you see here in the half sunburst, I used it very specifically on each petal, but I went random, up and down, sideways, just to create some texture. Now that we have our silver flower stamped and texturized, now we're going to add some folds and some dimension to the blank. So first, what I would suggest is that you use your Sharpie, and I have an ultra fine point Sharpie to do this, but it could be any size Sharpie. So you can start by creating the petals with a Sharpie, and this will help you use it as a guideline for creating each petal. And it doesn't have to be exact, it's just a rough estimate. And you can kind of do it thick also, because later on when you polish it with your Pro Polish pad, it adds even more dimension to it. Now that you have your petals marked, you could go ahead and grab your chain nose pliers. And what I do is I line up your chain nose pliers with the mark and just fold your blank up towards your plier. And you're going to do this on every section. I find it easy to just use my thumb and have that do most of the work. And you will see it just starts to naturally form each petal. Like so. So it looks like a little cup. So you can see when I created each petal, it was pretty easy. I didn't have to use that much strength or force to do so, and that was because this is a 24 gauge blank. If you use a 20 gauge or a 22 gauge even, which are thicker than the 24 gauge, you will notice more resistance. The 24 gauge blank is perfect for this project. So to create a more softer look on my flower, I'm going to also use the round nose pliers to create more folds. So I'm going to go in here and just roll it out on each petal. Again, because nature's so freeform, you don't have to do it the same amount in each one or in each petal. You could also come in and pull up. I used the tip of my round nose pliers also to kind of create little divots in each petal. And just look at it and see how the light reflects on it, and you could see different places where you might want to create more folds. Like this petal right here, I think I'm going to do a little more. And I think I'm happy with that. Now that I've added the Sharpie marks, it's ready to go ahead and use your Pro Polish pad to go ahead and polish it up so then we could put them together and complete our project. So if you notice here, I've left some of the Sharpie marks in each of the folds. You could take a look in between polishing every few seconds and just see how much you want to leave or remove on each petal. I like to leave some of the Sharpie on each crease mark because I just think that leaves a lot more dimension when putting them together. Now we're ready to use our hole punch pliers, the 1.8 mil, to create the hole in each of our flowers. If you notice, I put the Sharpie mark in the middle just to have a visual of where to create our hole. I'm not going to use anything to buffer the hole punch pliers. Sometimes if you are using the hole punch pliers on a blank, you put a piece of paper to make sure that there is no markings around the hole. But because we're layering this up one on top of the other, and then there's going to be the nuts and bolts covering your hole, I'm not really concerned with any extra markings. So I'm going to go ahead and create the hole. So go ahead and line up the top of the hole punch pliers with that black Sharpie mark in the center and go ahead and press down. Sometimes it's a little bit tricky to get it off, but you just want to wiggle it and work it off like so, and you can see the hole. And now we're going to go ahead and do that with the silver flower. Again, you could see the Sharpie mark in the center. I'm just going to line that up and create your hole, wiggle it off, and there we go. Now it's time for the fun part. We get to stick it all together. So what we have to do that is the pair of hex wrenches and the nuts and bolts. What I like to do is I go ahead and put the gold flower kind of off center so the petals aren't exactly lined up, but they're off a little. Also, if you notice here, it's kind of poofy in the middle where you might not feel like the bolt is going to reach all the way through, or the nut. So what you can do here is create more of an angle using your chain nose pliers again. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I'm just folding it just so. I think that's good. So now we're going to grab the bolt and put it first through the middle of the gold-filled flower. And then you could grab the sterling silver flower and put it on top of that. At this point, it might feel a little weird because of all the space that's in between the two flowers, but that's okay. You don't have to worry about that because when you use the hex wrenches to tighten it all up, that space is going to disappear. Now you could turn it over, but just make sure that you hold the bolt with your finger as you're turning it over, and you're going to use the little washer, that's the really thin one, and then add the nut. You can try to get it started with your finger if you can, but you're going to feel like your fingers are really giant because everything is so small. So if you can't do it, don't worry about that. You could grab your hex wrench and get it started. So once you get it started, then you know your flowers won't fall off and you could kind of have more freedom with your hands. And you could grab your other wrench and go ahead and place the nut on one and the bolt on the other. And I just have one hand stay steady and I just twist the top one. And you remember, go right to tighten it. And just keep twisting it till you get it to the spot that you like. The tighter you go, the tighter the flowers will come together as well, creating even more dimension. So I placed my flower back side up on the bench block. And I'm going to use the long part of the riveting hammer, and I'm going to go ahead and tap out that. And I kind of use a up and down motion or side to side motion, starting from one part and work my way to the other side and go back and forth. So we're done riveting, and you can see that if I turn it to the side, now that bolt and the nut is nice and flush, and we don't have to worry about the nut or bolt becoming loose and falling off. So it is secure and finished. So try this technique on all the blanks that we have, like I did here with the butterfly. You could add dimension and shape to all sorts of blanks. Have fun!